Washington's clear thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
6:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham here.
So dramatic this morning.
I know, right?
Yeah,
it's Friday. I'm unleashing. We have Jimmy Petticoukis of Reuters with us, the man whose children are going to be paying my Social Security. How's it going, Jimmy?
It was going great till I just heard you with that very serious opening. I sat up, I buttoned the top button on my shirt. I'm ready to go. Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Well, these are serious times, Jimmy.
All business around here. I wanted to ask you, because I just saw you tweet about this New York Times story. Number of green jobs fails to live up to promises. Imagine that. I actually looked it up on Nexus Lexus and found a story from 2008 of the type that the New York Times has been writing for quite some time, entitled "Millions of Jobs of a Different Color," about green-collar jobs. Interesting how that all worked out.
You have companies based here, and then a lot of the manufacturing, the actual jobs, other than kind of back office stuff, is being done in China, surprisingly. So you have a case where the U.S. government ends up funding, again, job creation in Xinjiang province or something.
Right. We were just talking about on the show, who do you believe about the economy? Morgan Stanley said yesterday, close to a recession. Dangerously close to recession. Barack Obama says no recession in danger at all. What do you think?
Well, what was interesting is that the president is calming us, attempting to put out a positive image, but it's economic report after report. We have this brewing panic in Europe about their debt situation, and just last night, and I wrote about this in my blog, you had J.P. Morgan, run by Obama friend Jamie Dimon. They came out with their revised lower 2012 forecast, which basically shows the economy barely growing, and unemployment on election day of about 9.5%, even higher than it is right now. What the White House thought was their worst case economic scenario for 2012 is now becoming like the consensus baseline, Wall Street case for what the economy is going to look like in 2012, and it's not very good.
I freaked out when I started to hear that the banks are in big problems, and there was a report that there was one bank in Europe that is unnamed that had to take almost $500 billion in an emergency loan the other day. And then you hear in the United States, Bank of America stock's been just pounded lately. There are reports that they're going to lay off 10,000 people. How healthy are the banks right now, Jimmy?
It's like nothing's changed.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing's changed since 2000. You still have banks with all kinds of these, lousy mortgage-backed securities on their books, and that's in the U.S. And then you have in Europe, where you have a lot of banks owning a lot of this, shaky government debt, and then you have U.S. banks owning, a lot of the debt of those banks. That's where you get sort of that ripple contagion effect. And if you talk to people, especially talk to people at the Federal Reserve, they're extremely concerned about these European banks, who, by the way, are far less transparent about what they own and how they buy and sell assets than U.S. banks. I mean, they're really quite mysterious. So there are huge concerns about European banks, how that affect our banks, and there's a chance here that whoever the next president is be, whether it's Obama's second term or Republicans' first term, that many of these huge issues aren't going to be a lot of different in January of 2013 than they were in January of 2009.
We were talking just earlier. I believe that like 20 years from now, or whenever we look back on this period of history, we'll say that 2008 or 2007 was the start, and it went for a decade or so where we were just in this malaise or in this very slow growth. That technically we're out of the Great Recession, but we're really not out of it. I mean, we're just chugging along barely, if we are even chugging along.
And listen, what aren't we hearing about? We have a Republican campaign going on. We're starting to have these debates. How much have you heard about banks? How much have you heard about the housing situation? Very little. And these are these two issues which were driving this crisis in 2008, 2009. In the White House, they're sort of they're trying to always come up with a new plan. Their housing plan hasn't worked. We haven't heard anything more about banks since Dodd-Frank. Banks are maybe getting in trouble again. It's really like Washington's not focusing on two of the problems which got us into this mess and maybe getting us into a second mess.
Jimmy, the Dow is down nearly 20% since July 21st. It fell to 419 points yesterday. And I read this story that said that we may be entering what is known as a negative feedback loop. And I don't know if I can define that, I have said, but I know it's something you don't want. Can you help me with that? What does that mean? And should we be really concerned about our retirement accounts? A lot of people count on their 401k to send their kids to school.
You know what? Back in 2000, if you would have asked, any investor the best way to invest, they'd say buy and hold, be a long-term investor. The market's gone nowhere for a decade. The other Brian mentioned Japan, where the Japanese stock market was at 39,000 in 1989. It's at 9,000 right now. Forget about going nowhere over a generation. It's gone down. You get this negative feedback loop. It ends up becoming a vicious circle of lower expectations and lower confidence, driving stocks down even further. Though, of course, I think that's not just a psychological thing. It actually, I think, reflects some of the fundamentals, and people wonder what to do with their money. The market's gone nowhere. We have another, a Japanese-like scenario where you have a generation of bad stock market returns. What do you do with your money other than park it in bank or low-yielding bonds? That's why you have people putting their money in gold. Gold seems to be and these commodities seem to be the only thing that's going up.
Jimmy, I wonder what you think for a Republican candidate would be a good message on banks and perhaps regulation thereof in the housing market. I mean, some have occasionally dropped, we need to repeal the latest regulation bill, which undoubtedly is a boondoggle, but is not the most positive looking forward message.
No, the Republican message on the banks is basically let's repeal Dodd-Frank.
Right.
Let's let them fail. I haven't heard one on housing other than we have to get the economy moving. That'll help housing, which is great, unless you also think that the housing market in itself is slowing the economy because people have all this debt. Yeah. They're on the house underwater, so they can't move to take the better job. There aren't really any great easy answers. I'd love to come back and talk about my very detailed plan for reforming banks, but there's no easy answers, which is why I think they're not talking about it.
All right. Jimmy Petlicook, it's always good to have you here on the Morning Majority. Come by anytime.